Ecstatic cheers from devoted fans, clenched jaws among jealous rivals. Tonight the spotlight lands squarely on a power duo that refuses to play by the old rules. Ozan Akbaba has just lit a fuse under the industry with a move that nobody saw coming, and right beside him stands Sinem Ünsal, proud, steady, and impossibly radiant, amplifying every heartbeat of the moment. You're watching Turkish Spotlight Secrets, the channel where whispers turn into waves and every rumor has a rhythm. Before we dive into the whirlwind, make sure you're subscribed and ready, because this story is the kind you don't just hear, you feel it. The tremor that started the frenzy? Ozan's name entering IMDb's top 500 talents, a list that sends careers sprinting and egos scrambling. The ranking didn't merely flash on a screen, it echoed across Turkey, rolled into Europe, and ended up crashing into conversations in Los Angeles boardrooms. Insiders tell us he wasn't just in the pack. He was roaring ahead at 117th, a number that felt like a dare. Overnight, the narrative shifted from whether Ozan could step onto a larger stage to who would get to stand there with him, and the first answer to that was already clear: Sinem. They've long been adored individually, he with the cool burn of a leading man who can smolder without saying a word, she with a warmth that turns even the toughest scenes soft around the edges. Together, though, they generate a kind of electricity that sets comment sections ablaze. When the ranking news landed, Sinem didn't post a cliché, she posted a moment. A black and white photo from a quiet evening, Ozan looking away, the city lights maple gold, her caption a single sentence that felt like a promise: I always knew the world would hear you. Within minutes, the image was everywhere. Fans translated it into a dozen languages. Media sites framed it as a love story with a career twist. Rivals called it strategy. But for their supporters, it was proof of what they'd been saying for months, that this couple moves like a team. What makes this ranking different is how it recalibrates the geography of Ozan's career. Europe was already listening. He drew festival attention with that granite focus and deliberate stillness that camera lenses love, while Sinem made hearts thud with a kindness that reads even from a distance. In Milan, in Madrid, in Berlin, their names were already a kind of password for those in the know. Streaming charts got cozy with their projects, late-night hosts learned how to pronounce their names right. Now, with an international yardstick measuring Ozan's momentum and finding it red-hot, the question isn't whether, but when. And for whom. There's talk of doors swinging open in Hollywood, but let's not pretend those doors haven't been peeking. Agents started calling the second the ranking trended. A script, one of those guarded PDF files you have to read in a locked room, landed with his name on it and a note that made fans gasp when they heard the rumor: chemistry test with Sinem requested. Imagine it, Ozan's heavy-lidded intensity meeting Sinem's clean, luminous energy on a global screen. The kind of pairing that doesn't just sell tickets but sparks copycats. Nothing on paper yet. No announcements, just murmurs and tightly sealed smiles. But that's how these things start, and if you've watched our channel long enough, you know the quiet before the scream. The pushback was as loud as the applause. Rival circles suddenly found their tongues. Anonymous quotes fluttered into gossip columns like moths to a stadium light. Some clucked that rankings don't act, that lists don't carry scenes. Others grumbled that Europe's love is fickle, that Turkey's talent doesn't always translate. But those same voices watched the numbers, watched the trending graphs climb like ivy, and knew this wasn't just a pretty moment. It was momentum. A breakthrough with muscle, backed by a fanbase that organizes like a street team and celebrates like a festival. And speaking of fans, nobody does devoted like theirs. Within hours, tribute videos appeared, stitched from behind-the-scenes clips and red carpet glances. A fan account from Naples posted a montage titled "The Moment He Became Global," cutting between Ozan's storied roles and candids of him laughing with Sinem in salty sea light. In Ankara, a group organized a donation drive in their names, gifting the announcement a stamp of goodness. Istanbul's midnight skyline glowed as supporters gathered for a spontaneous celebration, faces lit by phone screens, shouting into the night as if the Bosphorus itself might carry the news farther. Sinem's name snuck into every second caption, proof that this ranking was his, yes, but their story all the same. On set, the air changed. Not with arrogance, but with forward tilt, a sense that the next scene might be the one someone, somewhere, uses to pitch Ozan for a role on another continent. Crew members claim he's sharper than ever, more precise, like he's measuring frames with an inner metronome. Co-stars praise his generosity, his way of letting a scene breathe until the other actor inhales confidence. Sinem, meanwhile, walks in with that easy grace that makes every hallway calmer. She's the first to hug a nervous newcomer, the last to leave a table read. When rumors surfaced of minor flare-ups driven by jealousy, old-timers scoffed and said that's what happens when gravity shifts, objects rattle as they find a new place to stand. Industry insiders split evenly between admiration and alarm. A producer in London, asked off the record, confided that meetings had already been scheduled to discuss the pair for an international limited series. Picture a windswept coastline, a thriller with heart, a script that lets both of them do what they do best. Him, the controlled burn, her, the shimmering honesty. That same week, a Hollywood executive reportedly requested footage of them together in a rehearsal room, not just to check sparks, but to study the fine grain of their rhythms. Do they interrupt each other in the right ways? Can silence between them be interesting? Do their eyes tell the same story when nobody speaks? People who've watched them work know the answers already. Meanwhile, rival camps tried to redraw the battlefield. There was chatter about how other actors had already filmed international pilots, how numbers could be nudged with a well-timed campaign. But even the chattiest whispers grew thin against the drumbeat of public affection. The comment sections didn't just glow, they pulsed. Ozan's name carried comments like thunder. Sinem's name carried them like a song. Editorials blossomed with headlines that flirted with the truth: Turkish star poised for global leap, partner's subtle signal lights the way. Europe says yes, LA leans in. Each headline added friction to the wheel, and the wheel only spun faster. What about the work that brought them here? For Ozan, years of inhabiting roles that required steel and empathy at once. Characters you couldn't merely watch, you had to sit with them, argue with them, forgive them. For Sinem, a tapestry of performances that held the camera with kindness, proving that soft isn't weak and gentle doesn't mean simple. Together, they stack up to the kind of filmography that looks, in hindsight, like a long, careful ascent. Not luck. Not an accident. A build. Then came the wildest rumor of them all, a studio-sent outline resembling an audacious cross-cultural drama with notes highlighting 2 roles designed for a real-life couple. Unconfirmed. Unannounced. Yet the whispers were consistent. They say the story would open in Istanbul and crest in New York, with scenes that would let Ozan trade stillness for storm and let Sinem turn brightness into something magnetic and slightly dangerous. They say the producers want to showcase authenticity, to let Turkish talent claim space in a way that feels earned rather than borrowed. They say the couple's names were penciled at the top of the page when the writer began typing. They say so many things. And every time the rumor mill slowed, another grain dropped and sent them spinning again. Of course, not every room is celebratory. We're told at least one rival actor's team scrambled to push glossy features, timed interviews, and strategic leaks to recenter attention. But the problem with a moment like this is that it's not a press release, it's a pulse. You can't fake the way fans cry when they feel seen. You can't manufacture the hush that falls over a cinema when a performance gathers everyone together by the throat. The tide, they're calling it that now, didn't arrive in a truck or a headline, it arrived because these 2 kept pushing, kept trying, and suddenly the world was ready to catch up. On social media, the storm was gorgeous. Comment threads that began as confetti sometimes turned to fire, but not here, not this week. Instead you saw thoughtfulness. Long notes about how representation matters, about how seeing Turkish artists win on a global stage feels like watching someone kick open a door you were told was locked. You saw watch parties organized in Lisbon and Lyon, fans reminding each other to be kind in the replies, to celebrate without stepping on anyone else's shoes. And you saw what every studio watches for these days: sustained energy. Not a spike, not a wobble, but a rise that holds. Friends close to the couple describe them as calm in the eye of the weather. A late-night drive down the coast. A stop for tea with no photos, just steam curling and laughter too soft to record. A side-by-side workout session, Ozan counting under his breath, Sinem straightening his form with 2 fingers on his shoulder. They don't pose when they don't have to. They don't make speeches to the wind. They let the work and the affection speak, and somehow, that's louder than any megaphone. Let's not forget the set memories pouring out of the woodwork now that the world is listening harder. A camera operator remembers Sinem staying late to run lines with a nervous guest star. An assistant director recalls Ozan arriving early for fight choreography, learning not just his moves but the camera's path so he could shape the scene as a dance rather than a brawl. A costume designer tells of fittings where the couple teased each other without ever puncturing the room's focus. These aren't accidents, they're habits, and habits paint futures. So where does this river flow? The map looks something like this: award chatter that isn't just local anymore, festival invitations tucked into emails with international signatures, and that lingering possibility that the next time they walk a carpet, the carpet won't be Turkish or European, but global in the most literal sense. Ozan's ranking didn't hand them a destiny. It handed them a microphone. What they say into it, together, will determine the volume. And it's not just about the flash. It's about what this does for the conversation around Turkish performers at large. Suddenly journalists are building primers on their filmographies. Casting directors are warning each other not to sleep on Istanbul. The narrative is changing from "can they?" to "how soon?" A door, once cracked, is generous in its opening. You can feel a shift as younger actors watch the couple and imagine a path they barely dared to draw before. Tonight, rival teams can sulk if they wish, but the current is moving, and it's moving toward a future where this couple's names are etched not just into local memory but into a broader cultural timeline. Their supporters aren't merely noisy, they're organized, they're articulate, and they're patient. They know this isn't a lottery ticket. It's a ladder. If you ask whether Ozan Akbaba will ride this wave to a lead in a major Hollywood production, the only honest answer is that momentum like this rarely fades if the work stays pure. If you ask whether Sinem Ünsal will join him on that screen, you'll hear 1,000 voices say they hope so, and a smaller, wiser chorus say that whatever comes, her path is already shining, with or without the plane ticket. And if you ask what happens next, well, we'll be here with you, measuring the minutes, listening for signatures, tracking the way their story keeps unfurling like a banner over a city that can't stop looking up. So, do you think Ozan Akbaba is about to become a global name on a marquee that stretches from Istanbul to Los Angeles? Will a bold new project elevate him further, and will Sinem Ünsal be right there as his scene partner, turning a career milestone into a chapter written for two? Drop your thoughts, your predictions, your favorite moments in the comments, because on Turkish Spotlight Secrets, your voice doesn't just echo, it shapes the story. If you felt the thrill tonight, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because this ride is only getting faster, and when the next big reveal arrives, we'll be right here to tell you every heartbeat of it.